So what's the incentive?
1, we get buildings right. We don't kill any more people. 2, at some point in the not too distant future, all the main contractors are going to say, I'm sorry, if you're not competent, you're not getting orders. And it's not going to be negotiable. What if this is a competent subcontractor and this is an incompetent subcontractor rather than the class A1, and the class F? Now where do you sit? Oh, crikey, I'm a designer. Yes, you selected, because you're going to select them and the materials that they're delivering and the way that they're going to deliver it. You selected. And they go, crikey, right, okay. So if you have not chosen the right subcontractor, you've not checked their driving license to make sure they're qualified to drive, and you set them on, that's your liability. And the thing is, that driver, when he gets into trouble, is more than likely going to jump on a ferry on a plane and go home to avoid criminal case and never come back to the UK. It's fine, it's a big world. But you, as the person that selected and employed them, you are now in trouble with the law. At some point, that door on competence will shut and will go, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to take that risk anymore. Because it's my livelihood, it's my personal financial well-being that's at risk. And if it's a really bad issue, it could be my personal freedom that's at risk. I might end up with a 2-year stretch in prison, and I really don't fancy that. I'm too pretty for prison.
Neville, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us today about JCI and Baseline Competency Assessment. I would like to first, if you can introduce yourself, who are you, and why are you the person to be involved with JCI?
Thank you for inviting me today, Eugene. That's very kind of you. I'm the Director of Facades and Roofs for Wates Group. We're a top tier 1 main contractor, principal contractor, turnover about 2.2 billion. The reason for the JCI was it came about 5 years ago, maybe 6. We had a problem on a site, and I realised that we'd got a lack of understanding of how we were supposed to be designing, manufacturing, procuring and building a facade. And I started kicking this around, and I was introduced to the CSG, the Competence Steering Group, which was launched out the back of Dame Judith Hackett's investigation into the Grenfell report, the Grenfell disaster. And it quickly became obvious to me that although the CSG were working on overall frameworks for competence, for making sure that we'd got the right skills, knowledge, experience and behaviours in the industry, it wasn't actually giving us a guide as to how to fill those empty sets. So we set the JCI up, and we brought together 12 main contractors, tier 1s, and a number of trade bodies to start working on building competence.
So what is the incentive for other main contractors to become involved in the JCI? What is that response to the Building Safety Act, or it's a wider problem?
It's twofold, actually. So you response to the Building Safety Act, the BSA. Yes, there's obviously a benefit there, because if you've got the right people that are doing the right things, you're the right side of the law. However, the bigger benefits are twofold. 1, you're going to end up with projects that are built correctly first time, right? And the main contractors spend an inordinate amount of money repairing buildings that were not constructed correctly years prior. And you'll see that in the accounts that all the main contractors have been filing these last few years. It's quite obvious. So if we can do away with that loss of money, that loss of effort, we have a better chance of bringing jobs in on time and bringing them in on budget and actually satisfying a client. There is actually a third benefit. The wider industry becomes more competent, and as a result, the reputation is rebuilt with the public. Because at the moment, construction industry has a pretty poor reputation with the general public.
Yes, we all can agree on that. So what is the industry's reaction to JCI in general? Because obviously main contractors are driving it. I guess they identified a lack of framework for competence assessment. But what is the wider industry reaction? Is industry aware of JCI? What do you think?
Yes. So I'll pick up on one point that you made there, which was it's driven by the main contractors. It's not. It's driven by the stakeholders. So the JCI includes manufacturers of product, distributors of product, especially subcontractors, principal contractors, main contractors, insurers, consultants, and clients. So anybody that's got anything to do with the outside of a building, anything where you would have a vested interest, either you're selling a material or it's going to be on your building or you're insuring it. We're trying to get everybody in the room. At the moment, we've got something north of 100 volunteers from across industry. And we are now part of the CSG has actually transformed into the Industry Competence Safety Group. So it's gone from CSG to ICSG. And as the ICSG, they're actually working directly for the Industry Competence Committee, which is part of the Building Regulator. The ICSG and JCI are now locked at the hip. So we've got a direct line into government and we've got a direct line back down through the entire supply chain. And we spend a lot of time talking at trade events, technical conferences about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and trying to get people interested in a way forward. We're also talking to, funnily enough, I spent the day with Oxford Brookes University earlier this week, talking to them about what the future might look like for this industry in terms of bringing new people in. And the only way we're going to do that is have a competence framework that says, right, as a new joiner, you are going to have to find a way to get this level of competence, skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviour. Now, it's going to be primarily knowledge coming out of a university. So you're going to come out with a degree or a baseline course or something, and you can see how your career would progress. Now, I'm not just saying that this would happen through one university or a number of universities. This is going to come from a many different directions. IAST, your organisation being one of them, where we've joined up with you guys and said, what we need to do is develop a new way of training and assessing staff that are coming into the industry. So we've got, two drivers, and it's becoming more widely known. However, there's still a lot of work to do.
Oh, yes. So there's a lot of work. So what work has been done over the last 2 years? I know there is obviously the white paper.
Yes.
We are working on baseline assessment, baseline competency assessment. And is there any, that's what we see from our working group?
We're presently working towards a funded model for the JCI, so it has a permanent secretariat. At the moment, as I say, there's about 100 volunteers that help run it. Now, some are very, very active, some less so, and we need to change it so we've got a core of people that are driving it forward constantly and probably becoming more of a voice for our sector, directly into government to say, well, you can't do that, or you can do that, but we can improve things by doing this. Could you help us? So that's part of what we're doing now. We're actually talking with the Construction Leadership Council about how we make that work. So that's one thing. The second thing that we're doing is we're actually developing competency frameworks that tell you exactly what you should be doing at every level of your career. At the moment, we're working quite hard on installation. We've got groups that are talking about the installation of rain screen cladding, curtain walling, bolted glass, windows, ceramics, stone, flat roofing, including felt, cold applied, hot melt, slates, tiles. So we're actually working on the competencies for every single one of those. So we're saying, right, well, the skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviours that are needed for those jobs are bang. And then we're actually helping write new national occupation standards, which is the government's sort of benchmark job description for what we all do. Some are missing, so we're writing them from scratch. But the SCEB statement, the competence framework, and the NOS, the National Occupation Standards, overlap each other. We've got that off and running. We've already got 6 or 7 of those completed, and they're actually going into the delivery phase. And we're now setting up the exact same thing for salespeople, estimators, buyers, QSers, for site management. And we're working as part of the ICSG to make sure that there's comparison between what we think is at the right level for a site manager and what a dry liner thinks is the right level. Because what we don't want is us saying, well, you've got to have a degree, and a dry liner saying, well, an MVQ or a VQ level 2 is sufficient. We need to make sure we've got parity across the industry.
Right.
So we're working on that too.
That's great. So if you can tell a bit more about the white paper
Yes.
and the assessment. And because there is no, the baseline competency assessment is not mentioned in the white paper at all.
It is not yet. So the white paper was written and updated last year. And it basically sets out our goals for the JCI, what we think we should be doing. We talk about looking at the current competence of the industry. And we've got competent actors in the industry, right? Let's not get that wrong. There are good, competent contractors out there working for us. We initially were looking at competence for organisation and for individuals. We've left the organisational stuff now. We've dealt with that. We've got the common assessment standard that outfits like CHAS and Construction Line use to assess your competence as an industry, as a corporate body. But we still need to look at the individuals. Right. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at them and going, right, okay, so what's the difficulty proving your competence? Well, the difficulty is there is so little training, or there has been so little training for many of the jobs, that there's no way you could actually prove your competence. Like that, for example, my job, there's maybe 5 or 6 of us in the industry that sit at my level, but we all do slightly different jobs. So how do you get a certificate in that? Oh, right. Okay. That's kind of difficult. And when you bear in mind, I've been in the industry 37 years, and most of my CPD certificates, my material training certificates have gone in the bin over the 37 years and vanished off to recycling heaven, I hope. I'm looking at industry thinking they're probably the same as me. If you've had training that wasn't formal, CPD training, legal courses, that sort of thing, that didn't get a certificate from a college or a university, they've probably gone in the bin because nobody asked for them. So what we need to do is we need to work out who are the good people and who are the people that need work in terms of bringing their knowledge up, right? Skills, show me what you can do. Experience, show me what you've been working with and where you've been working. We don't want you building the next Shard, right? If you are only competent to build 2-story schools. If you've been building prisons for the last 4 years, coming out of a situation where it's heavy concrete and now we're going to put you into a lightweight structure such as, I don't know, university, you're going to need some retraining, right? Your experience is going to need updating. The behaviours, we expect you to already have that drilled into you, that desire to make sure that the buildings that are being used are suitable for the people that are occupying them or live in them, right? What we don't want is a situation where you stand in the car park when a project's finished, you look up at it and go, would I let my loved ones go and live in or work in that building? If you say anything other than an emphatic yes, we've done it wrong, right? So that brings me back to knowledge. We can't actually start asking the whole of the industry to go back and do millions and millions and millions of courses that they've had over the last 10, 20, 30 years. It would be ruinously expensive, and we'd lose so much time, which we are short of, it would kill us. So what have we done? Well, we sat back and we said, well, what we need to do is we need to come up with a way to assess your current level of competence, your knowledge, because the Building Safety Act will allow you to be knowledgeable by dint of the fact that you've had previous learnings, right? So great. How do we check that? Well, we came to you and we said, we've got this crazy idea, Eugene. How do we check that? And that's where you came up with the idea of this assessment test that we can deliver online.
Yeah, assessment test is online. It's an interesting point that you mentioned that. First thing before we launch into, because you already kind of mentioned estimators several times, and I was interested in that. For example, I do believe that for your role, proving the competence is actually, and we talked about, is fairly straightforward. You just have to know a lot about many things and collect all these courses. And probably someone in your position would actually have to spend a lot of time learning. And there's a vast experience in varieties of fields. I'm not worried about that. And I don't think we should be. But someone like estimator, like how I started within this industry, is I started as an estimator, and the qualification that I had to show for was a pulse.
Yes.
So and last time I checked, it's still the same.
Yeah, there are two nurseries for construction: estimating and site. You either wander around site and get muddy, or we put you in estimating and you learn a bit about everything.
Yeah.
Which means that I'm putting you, if I'm the commercial director and I've been in this position, so I've got a young chap working for me, what do I do? Right, okay, well, I teach him how to do things. I send him to a few meetings with his manager, and over time I get to the stage where I'm quite confident he's not going to say something stupid, and off he goes. Has he had any official training to do that? No. He's working on what I've taught him. Now that's fine if I'm good at my job. And I've been lucky to have worked for good people, which is why I'm good at my job. Trust me, if I wasn't competent, Wates would have peddled me probably 6 years ago, right? I'm 7 years in. I wouldn't have made the first year. But that's luck. We shouldn't be relying on luck. If I'm an idiot and I teach you as an estimator to do idiotic things, that's all you'll remember for the rest of your career until somebody transformational comes into your life and goes, actually, that's wrong and this is why. And you might see the light. You might go, I can't work with this guy. He's wrong. I know Nev was right. That's a bad place for us to be as an industry. So you're right. Estimators come in. Have you got a pulse? Yeah, bingo. We're off to the races. What are you going to do? We're going to take off windows. We're going to take off curtain walling. And the number of times I had conversations with guys that have gone, well, we've got a window, it's 6 meters long and it's 1,500 high and it's one piece. And you say, well, that's all well and good because I know you can get 6 meter bar. So all you're doing is putting the mullions in and theoretically it'll work. And they go, yeah, it's fantastic. Have you thought about how long that is? That's 6 meters. It's about that big on my screen. And you take them out the car park with a tape measure and they see 6 meters, they go, oh my God. Mm-hmm. And do you know how much that weighs? And you tell them that and they go, oh Lord. Right, okay, how are we going to carry that around site? Now you're learning. But we ought to have a formal way to teach that. And again, that kind of comes back to this competency thing. If we've got people like that are in the industry now that have been working wrong, if they take the assessment test, the whole idea here is, right, you'll either prove yourself knowledgeable, and you'll have green ticks all the way through, or this will highlight the area you could do to go back and do some concentrated learning on. And that would be, for me, a fantastic tool for any business. Instead of me just blunderbuss throwing £5,000 at all my staff, each member of staff to train them on everything again, actually I can have focused training on the things that I need so that I don't end up with an estimator that you've been lucky in your career. You've worked with the right people, done the right research, done the right training, and you've got to where you are. But it could so easily have been you would still be stuck in that estimating office just taking off bits of glass.
To follow up with that, just before that talk, actually, we received a direct message I received on LinkedIn. The fenestration and facade industry absolutely needs qualifications, but it also requires all main contractors to demand their subcontractors to have them prior to award contracts.
Yes.
Now, as a main contractor and other people, other stakeholders in JCI, main contractors, how is it enforced? What do you do? Do you check other people's qualifications?
We do, but the problem is, and you've got to be somewhat pragmatic. If you look around the industry, as a percentage, how much of it has got the right certification? And I would say probably 20 to 30%. Right. Just to give you some figures, shortly after COVID, the first lockdown, we had 2.45 million people working in construction in round terms. I saw a figure from July this year, we're down to 2.05. So 400,000 people have vanished in the last 4 years.
Where have they gone?
Good question. They've either retired or decided that this is no longer for them, or they've gone back to Europe because of Brexit, right? It could be any of those. It could be all of those. But the truth of the matter is we've had a big drop. At 20%, that's quite a lot of people to lose. Right, okay, what are we going to do now? Well, the last thing we can afford to do is then take that reduced number and say we can only use 30% of it. We won't be able to work as an industry. So what we need to do is we need to plot a course from where we are now, pragmatically, to where we need to be over the next 5 to 10 years. And we want all the middle management that are actually managing and ensuring that the right things are happening. We want them to be able to prove their competence. And then you can look down your team and go, well, Fred's got training in curtain walling and Sarah's got training in rain screen cladding. I can't have them working in isolation. Sarah needs to concentrate on the cladding and Fred needs to concentrate on the curtain walling. I can't have them doing the other thing without training, right? Now, that's fine, but you've got to have considered what their training is. You've got to have considered their competence. And at the moment, we're not. We're just going, oh, you take the next estimate, you take the next estimate. That's not what we should be doing. So, yes, I agree. We should be checking the competence now. We should only be letting work to competent people. But in actuality, if we said that, how much of the industry would say, well, this is a pay to play, we're not playing anymore, and they'll go home? I realise it sounds like I'm watering down what the Building Safety Act wants, right? And I realise it's kind of a risky proposal, but the regulator is aware that we are struggling as an industry. Now, the Industry Competence Committee was set up to ensure, and this is in the Building Safety Act, so this is nothing political, it's nothing outlandish, to ensure that they supported and promoted competence within industry. And that's what they're doing. They're working very closely with the ICSG and with the JCI to get those competencies and then to drive them down the supply chain and get people where they need to be. I think the people that are crowing at the moment going, well, you should only use competent people, are people that are in the minority and ahead of the game, and they're trying to press the commercial advantage. And I get that. They are the safest place to put your money right now. But you're not going to get many unitised curtain wallers wanting to do a £100,000 curtain wall screen on a school.
Yes. Talking about that, once we have started about 1.5 years ago, delivering varieties of courses.
Yes.
I have realized, and we have all realized that, and I'm surprised how much work on projects in the UK is actually done abroad.
Oh, yes.
Both design and management and also fabrication.
Yes.
Large. So, and on some projects, and especially the ones that are larger ones, almost all of that work is done abroad.
Yes.
How do you ensure that Building Safety Act permeates to these people? How do you ensure that these people outside of the country that are delivering the high-risk building work, predominantly that will be the people outside, how would you ensure that they're competent to the standards of the country that they have never been to?
That's a damn good question. And it's not just the large builders either. There's a tidal wave of change coming through the UK market. So we look out at London, we see these high prestige, high rise buildings that are mainly unitized. And you go, yeah, well, it's pretty much guaranteed it's going to be carried out by a European company, maybe a Far Eastern company, primarily by European though. And what's the chances of them understanding the Building Safety Act, understanding current building regs? When we get changes on a regular basis, we had one fairly recently for approved document B, which came out quite quietly, no fanfare, and very few in the industry have picked up on it. The main contractors at the top of the table have seen it because we all have our ear to the ground. We have staff to do that. But if you're a tier 2 main contractor with fewer staff, or if you're a subcontractor, or if you're a foreign subcontractor, what chance have you? So we need to be working more closely with our supply chain. But this tidal wave I'm talking about, we have now got subcontractors that are turning 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty small. They are using foreign design outfits, including Polish, Latvian, Lithuanian, Serbian. They used to use Ukrainian as well, Filipino, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian. We've also got them buying fabricated product from the old Eastern Bloc, from Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, or Serbia as well, because they're more cost effective. And you go, well, how do you know that your supply chain is competent to do that?
Yes.
And they're going, we've never thought about it. Really, I've literally had that conversation about 3 hours ago today with a new subcontractor that's trying to get on our supply chain. I said, how do you know? And they said, we don't even know how we could prove our competence to check their competence. What should it look like? But back to the JCI, that's a good tool for you to use to say, actually, can you meet this? We also look at, because you're going to say, well, what about qualifications? What qualifications should they have? Because they're not going to have a master's in facades. They're not going to have a British certificate. No, but we've got a tool for checking equivalency of a German or Italian or a Spanish certificate. So you can come and work here. We're not trying to put borders up, that you can't get past. But you're right. We need to be asking those questions in tender. Right. Have you got the right people to do this? Because the last thing I want is to get to the point where we're about to start a building like the Shard or the Swiss rebuilding, and everybody's looking around going, nobody here's trained how to do this.
Another thing is, so what's the incentive for people to take building base competence assessment? What would be the incentive for?
What's the incentive?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're an owner of a company and you've got 20 staff, you've got two choices. You can either send them for all the courses that you need to meet the JCI standards, because we'll say, well, we need a VQ, or we need a degree, or we need an HNC or an HND, or whatever it might be. And you're going, okay, well, what's that going to cost me? £10,000 a person. I've got 20 people, 10,000 people, £10,000. So I've got to find £200,000 tomorrow in a market that's already cash strapped. That's difficult. Or I can go out and I can assess through the JCI and the IAST. I can assess what competent people I have in my business by sending them to a relatively inexpensive test.
We will try to make it that it's not going to be it will be a very cost effective, basically.
Correct. So we're looking for a cost effective way. So you come along, you go, right, okay, I've got 20 staff. You could put them all through for a couple of £1,000, less than it's going to cost you to send your staff through training. That's for sure. And then you'll be able to identify where you've got a weakness in your team. Now, the Building Safety Act says that if you've got a weakness in your team, that's not a problem, right? As long as you staunch it up with another resource, right? So if I give you an example, our CEO, I know Leonard, right? Now, he's a really good businessman, right? Our chief exec, he understands what we're trying to do. He has an overall view of the market, an overall view of the presence that we have. He's given us a new purpose, a new strategy, and we're driving the business forward. Could he do my job? Not a chance. Right, okay, well, you're delivering curtain wall jobs, therefore you can't have curtain wall jobs, Wates. No, Owen realises that he does not have the competence to do that, which is why he employs me. So if we go back to Fred and Sarah in estimating. Fred's really good at curtain walling, Sarah's really good at cladding. I'm doing full facades. Fantastic. As long as I make sure that those two are playing to their strengths and to their competencies, doesn't matter. If I get a full facade package in, I make the two work together, right? So what I can do is I can identify where there's a weakness in my business, work out what I need to do in training terms. So I'm not giving a blunderbuss, massive cost to my bottom line that I can't afford, right? And I can work out who are the ones that need a little bit of tweaking, or can I reassemble my team so I'm competent? And if I can't, then I do need to do the training. So that's your whole driver. It's a cost-effective way to have a look under the hood. You're doing an MOT on your staff effectively, and you're making sure you're not saying you can't operate, right? That's the thing we've got to be really careful of. This is not a way of saying you can do your job or you cannot. This is right on the sliding scale of 0 to 100, right? Where are you in the various traits that you've got? You know, curtain walling, cladding, roofing, whatever it is, right? Whether it's design or whether it's installation. Where am I on that sliding scale? Right. I'm at 70%. Well, that's pretty good. Right. What could I do better? Well, you were a bit weak on this. Right. Okay. Well, I can go and do some more training, focus training. It just seems like a simple way to improve your business.
Good. So we are more or less covered the assessment. The one thing that I really want to discuss in the limited amount of time that we have is that Building Safety Act and the requirement to demonstrate your competence in SCAP, which is skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviors. The assessment will only cover you for knowledge.
Yes.
Potentially experience. Very debatable skills are not assessed because skills
Agreed.
is level 6. And behaviors. But there's two questions there. First one about experience. Doesn't this lock people in their current role forever? Because how can you gain experience? How you can just venture into new and variety of different facade fields without having experience? You are not qualified to do it because you don't have experience. So you can't get experience because there's a barrier there. And secondly, behavior. I think let's stick on the first one, experience. Doesn't this assessment or your current role, aren't we all locked in their current position with experiences? How do you see this?
Okay, so if we go back to the concept that you do not need to be fully competent to do something, right? That sounds like an alien idea when you put it up against the Building Safety Act, but actually it's quite simple. So my question to the Building Safety Regulator when this first came out was, how do I get to something that's novel? If somebody came to me with a Swiss rebuilding, because there's only one in the UK, right? What's the chances of a team here knowing how to do that? Well, pretty slim. Right, okay. If we assemble a team that understood how to do the structural engineering, understood what their risks were in building that building because they'd worked on high-rise buildings that were square previously. If we had an expert in glass structural strengths and limitations, if we brought them together as a team, would they jointly be competent? And the regulator said, yes. Okay, so if I'm stuck in a position where I'm only doing schools at the moment, and I go to my main contractor and say, look, I've only done schools. I want to move on to do low-level housing. Right, that's a market I want to get into. I want to get into recladding, low-level housing. That's not a big leap. A main contractor could easily say, actually, do you know what? We can put somebody alongside you to manage the risk. We can keep an eye on you, make sure that you come up to level. Have you had training to use the materials? And you might go, yeah, actually, we've been using those exact same materials on schools. Or you might say, no. If you say no, right, we'll go get trained by the manufacturers, come back to us when you know how to install it, then we'll look at supporting you onto another scheme. Because this is all about, for the main contractors, it's all about developing a supply chain that's going to have some longevity. So I can't have a young Eugene stuck as a trainee estimator for the rest of his life who can only do small curtain wall screens. If you've got a competent boss, your competent boss should be saying, I've done quite a range of things. I'm going to teach you how to do those things, and you can grow. And if we set out the competence steps to get from trainee estimator to a facade consultant, or in my case, director of facades and roofing, then other kids can follow that and go, okay, I know what I've got to do to get to each step. And it's less like eating the elephant. Because you and I, when we started off all those years ago, particularly me back in the 80s, if you'd said I was going to be sat here today, I would have laughed my head off and thought you were nuts. So just by working together, understanding where the weaknesses are in the team, I go back to Owen, right? How could he run a business? He'd never run a construction business before because he knew he had to assemble the right team around him and make sure he understood their skill sets.
So let's go back to behaviors.
Yes, behaviours. Sorry.
Behaviors. But big question is it, do we need to do anything about it as an industry? Because no one seems to have a framework to demonstrate a behavior. I think we had this conversation about 1.5 years ago because that is still not clear. You cannot assess your own behavior.
No.
What is the way of assessing behavior?
You're right. It's something that you can display, but you don't always monitor. And you tend to think of you as your best self. You are the hero in your own story. So you kind of go, yeah, I don't lash out. I don't get sulky. I don't hold grudges. I'm Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect. What we tend to do at Wates is we have a twice yearly assessment of somebody's performance, right? A PDR, professional development review. And we say, right, okay, we're going to set certain targets in terms of behaviours. Okay. And we set things, we have certain guiding principles that we use. So we set those guiding principles and we say, right, okay, what's your target this year to prove that you do that? For instance, we care, right? That's one of our guiding principles. We care, not just about ourselves, but our customers, the architects and their design, the subcontractors and the manufacturers, right? Everybody in between. How do we make sure we care? And one of my staff came in and gave me this lovely, beautifully crafted answer that was just so corporate. I went, you don't care about any of that. What do you care about? What are you going to do this year that you really care about? Don't give me... Anyway, I really care about this. Fantastic. That's a target for this year. I want to see you improving on that. Mm-hmm. Right? You can keep dipping back in the tank. And the things that are linked directly to Building Safety Act. So caring about the people that occupy the buildings and actually demonstrating that. So my take on this, I've been encouraging the ICSG to incorporate this into their frameworks, is can we not say, look, do this dip in the tank twice a year. Ask people, how are you proving that you're thinking about that? Because we have been and I'm not talking about the main contractor, I'm talking about the entire construction industry. It's been quite feral, and it's all about the money, right? So the reason we kicked off the JCI, or I kicked off the JCI, was because one guy stuck some passive fire protection on a facade. And then when I pointed out he'd put the wrong material on, he went, well, there's no money in me putting it right. I'm going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, on the one hand, I was horrified by that. But on the other hand, I can entirely understand his point of view. He was getting X pounds a square metre to put this on. He'd put it on. He'd been given the wrong product. Nobody's going to pay him to put the right product on. If he doesn't get paid today, his family don't eat, the mortgage doesn't get paid. We're set up wrong. So we need to start thinking about paying the right price for projects, right? And then allowing the time for the projects, making sure we all make the margin for the projects, and then we'll be more relaxed about actually spending a bit more time on it, right? Give you an example, curtain walling. The number of times that you see a design turn up and you say, how do the mullions and transoms connect? Oh, we've used shear blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we use shear blocks. Why? Well, they're cheap in manufacture and they're easy to fit. I get that, but it's now going to make installing that curtain walling on site really difficult. If you go with spring pins and spend the extra 10p a connection or whatever it is, right? If you spend that money there, you wouldn't have subcontractors walking off site because they've got the grid work up and the glass in and they're not doing any more because they've run out of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get people that are going to go, well, I can throw the grid up and now I can spend my time looking at all the perimeters, the EPDM or not the EPDM, the
weather seal.
Yeah, the weather seals. Sorry, it's force of habit. The weather seals and the perimeter details and the features, the architectural features, because I've got time to do that. But we're not good at that as an industry. We've been driven down to a lowest cost for so long. We've all become quite, feral. We're all kind of wildcats just looking out for number one. We need to stop that, which is, again, I know it sounds like I've gone a little bit like I want to hug a tree, but that's not the intention. The intention is if we can improve our performance for everybody, it means we make more money because we don't spend time fixing stuff that we got wrong because that costs money.
I understand. So costing money, investing in staff.
Yes.
A number of staff of a particular company would just not score particularly well at the baseline assessment or not, or they would just not have other certificates to prove their competence or demonstrate it. Why an employer would be incentivized to invest in that particular individual, and that particular person that is currently with the company? Because once the person becomes more competent, there's a chance that he or she may leave to find a better job, or would request more money for to stay in the particular role. So what's the incentive for employers not to actually spend time? We find that actually just spending time, employees' time, is a problematic thing that they see, rather than just invest into buying a course or something. It's just that freezes up that time. So what's the incentive?
One, we get buildings right. We don't kill any more people. That's a great start.
A good start,
right? So that's why we're doing this. We want to make sure that we're doing it right. Two, at some point in the not too distant future, all the main contractors are going to say, I'm sorry, if you're not competent, you're not getting orders. And it's not going to be negotiable. It's negotiable right now. We're at the thin end of the wedge, but we're going to get to the fat end. And 5 years is not a long time, right?
Can you expand on 5 years? What is this timeline?
If we're talking about the competency, and we think that it's going to take about 5 years to get people to a place where they're either trained or in training, or they've proved their level of knowledge, right? We think it'll probably take 5 years. We think in the next 2 years, we'll have all the middle management at the right level, and then we'll start going down the chain towards the junior staff, and we start getting them on the right path, and then we get new people in, and we get them off on the right path right from the get-go. Okay. But at some point over this wedge, contractors are going to start going, enough. Mm-hmm. And it's going to come. It's not debatable. We're already seeing actions by the regulator where they're stepping in going, do you know what? You're not doing what you should be doing. You're not interested in the Building Safety Act. You're not dealing with the requirement for competence. We need a chat with you and you're going to get a fine. Right? We're already seeing that because people that are either ignorant of the law or even worse, know of the law and they're ignoring it, hoping it's going to go away, are going to get fined. I, for one, am not looking to end up getting fined. So I'm not prepared to accept our subcontractors being incompetent or they can't prove the competence eventually. I need to say, right, that's when I'm going to shut the gates. If you're outside, then you're on your own. So that's reason number 2. And reason number 3, and this is probably more of an existential threat for your business when you've got staff. And I've had this conversation with a subcontract managing director. I said, would you rather train somebody and risk that they might go away? You've got competent staff then. Or would you prefer to not train them and know that you've got incompetent staff for life? And he said, probably incompetent staff for life because they haven't cost me more. The problem is, if you're doing that, they're costing you money every day because they're making mistakes.
Interesting that you mentioned the fines. Subcontractors not necessarily would be afraid of fines as main contractors probably because they would not be able to hand over the building. Subcontractors, this Phoenix situation when a subcontractor would just have a problem on a project and they would just wrap up and create a new company and start from scratch. So I don't necessarily feel that the industry is afraid of financial losses on the lower level.
I think there's a misunderstanding, and I get this a lot. So it doesn't matter if we get this design wrong. We've got our PI insurance that'll back us,
right?
So we're fine. And you go, okay. Or doesn't matter. It'll be a case for the solicitors for the company to handle. Actually, that's wrong. The Building Safety Act says that you are responsible for your actions. You are the one that will be fined, not the business. And you go, oh, if I've designed it wrong, I'll use my PI. And I always go back to, think about your car insurance, right? If you run your car into mine, we have a civil claim between each other, my insurer and your insurer talk to each other and they settle, right? And if they don't settle, there's a court case and we settle in court. But that's a civil matter between two people. We're talking about a criminal matter. Your insurers don't back you if it's a criminal matter. So if you get drunk and run me over and kill me, right? That's a criminal matter. You're going to be charged with driving drunk and disorderly, right?
Right.
Or under the influence. And at that point, your insurer goes, I'm out. You've brought that on yourself, right? You've no insurance. Now this is all coming at you. It's the same with the Building Safety Act. If we do something where you annoy Wates as a subcontractor, contractual matter, it's a civil matter. It'll get dealt with in the courts at worst, right? Normally, there'll be some sort of commercial settlement. However, if it's a matter that's broken the law because we haven't proved competence, we haven't followed the rules of the Building Safety Act, then you personally are liable for your actions. And if you've done something wrong, the regulator will come looking for you. It doesn't matter if you wrap your company up. It doesn't matter if you go and hide in the countryside. They're going to be looking for you to bring a criminal case against you.
So that's an interesting point. So if going back to the design subcontractor working abroad.
Yes.
So it's using your analogy. So you're not effectively, you're under influence and driving and killing someone. You're hiring a foreign driver.
Who's drunk and then goes home.
Not necessarily drunk, but you haven't checked that they have actually a driver's license suitable for that.
Correct.
So maybe not that much of a happened in terms of the financial loss. But then you can't prove the competence of your driver, of your designer.
Yes.
So
that responsibility is mine. So if I've chosen anything, I have designed. Right? This is a great way to think of it. If I select, I design. Because my commercial staff say to me, well, we're not designers. Right, okay. So if, for example, you chose this insulation over this insulation, this is Class A, reaction to fire A1, and this is Class F, and you put this on a high-rise building, would you expect to get into trouble? And they go, yes. I said, you bought one or the other. Yes. Right. What if this is a competent subcontractor and this is an incompetent subcontractor rather than the Class A1, and the Class F? Now where do you sit? Oh, crikey, I'm a designer. Yes, you selected, because you're going to select them and the materials that they're delivering and the way that they're going to deliver it. You selected. And they go, crikey, right, okay. So if you have not chosen the right subcontractor, you've not checked their driving license to make sure they're qualified to drive, and you set them on, that's your liability. And the thing is, that driver, when he gets into trouble, is more than likely going to jump on a ferry on a plane and go home to avoid criminal case and never come back to the UK. It's fine, it's a big world. But you, as the person that selected and employed them, you are now in trouble with the law. And when I see cases now on television where there are criminal cases about disasters with buildings, or like we had the other week, we had the tower on fire in London. I spent all weekend worrying that that might be one of Wates Group's from history. And if that's the case, have we done everything that we should to make sure that our supply chain was doing the right things? Because if not, if I was a regulator, I'd be looking at Neville and going, actually, Nev, did you do everything? Did you put all the process and procedures in place? Did you make sure that they were followed? If not, we might be coming and looking for you, Nev. So it goes all the way down the chain. So if we get something wrong, it's dangerous for us all, not just for the subcontractor who's going to try and hide, for everybody, which is why I'm saying at some point that door on competence will shut and we'll go, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to take that risk anymore, because it's my livelihood, it's my personal financial well-being that's at risk. And if it's a really bad issue, it could be my personal freedom that's at risk. I might end up with a 2-year stretch in prison, and I really don't fancy that. I'm too pretty for prison.
Yes. So from that perspective, that's probably concludes it. That's all the questions I wanted to put in front of you. Do you want to say anything else on the about the baseline assessment test, or is there any message out for the industry?
Certainly, and I think it's as simple as this. So from my perspective, we're looking at an assessment that means that you can quickly and relatively inexpensively work out whether your staff are at the right level of competence for your business. You can assess what they're doing and you can put your money into the right people at the right time. Now, this assessment test has been prepared by the IAST in association with the JCI, and we have employed volunteers at the highest level of facade engineering to help the IAST. We've assembled over 800 questions. There will be a variety of those that you get delivered in the test, and I think that it would make a financial and business sense to take that test. I've been really careful not to get involved with any of the questions. And this is a really, this is something I'm quite happy for you to share with the audience for this video. You can cut this in by all means. I haven't looked at the answers. I haven't looked at the questions because I intend to take the test. Right? I don't see why I should be above being tested at any level. Right? If I can't prove it, right, then why would I promote it and say everybody else has got to do it? That seems unreasonable to me. Oh, I'm sat in my ivory tower. I don't have to worry. I'm above. No. I am chewing my nails much like everybody else will be doing, thinking, oh my Lord, I've got some questions to answer. Nobody wants to be tested. Would you want to do your driving test again?
No.
Exactly. Well, there you go. You see? So
probably fail it this time around.
Well, exactly. And I think that's the truth of the matter. We're all terrified that we'll be found out. We all have imposter syndrome to a degree. That's a human nature thing.
Yeah.
So you kind of go, well, actually, and when you said, do you want to see the questions? Are you happy to look in through? No, I don't want to see them. Why not? We've had a team that are already certified to the back teeth. We've got masters in facades. We've got degrees from Germany and from Italy, and we've got, the level of questioning that you've had from the JCI team, and rightly so. But sometimes they've stretched to their own level. We're not going to their level. We're going to a lower level at the moment, and we need to be cognizant of that. But I think it's only right that if I haven't had a hand in writing those questions or seeing the preparation, I should do the test. I should put my money where my mouth is.
That's good. I really look forward to
I don't.
I'm also nervous. I'm very nervous because I don't want this to find out that this test is has to serve purpose. It doesn't has to. It does. I don't want the test to be a blunt tool that actually will put barriers.
I genuinely don't think that this test is going to be something that is going to be divisive. Right? People won't want to take it. That's human nature. I don't want to take it, and I'm committing on video to say I'm going to take this test. Right? I can't back out of that now. I can't go, oh, I don't remember saying that. Let me show you the footage, Nev. Yeah. So nobody likes it. And I think people will react going, I'm sure it'll be loaded in some way. No, this is genuinely, it's a good business tool for you to know where you're at with your business. Because let's face it, you bring in new staff. I mean, we've got just over 6,000 now at Wates, right? So how the hell do you assess people? Because we're going to have to start doing this with everybody that comes through the door, apart from people that are doing HR and accountancy, right? Anybody that's live on a project, we're going to have to assess them before we take them on. And at the moment, we've got 6,000 staff that we haven't done that pre-assessment on. We know what they can do now, and we're working out where we've got additional training to give. But imagine if we had this tool that worked for main contractors. It would be so big a task for you, it would drive you insane. But if we could replicate this for main contracting, and it was a tool, go on there, get the test done. They'll tell you whether they're competent or not. Fabulous, great. Okay, well, not competent, but knowledgeable. It'll give you the knowledge from the competence. As you rightly say, skills, show them what you can do. You'll find that out in a few weeks from the starting.
Oh, yeah.
Experience, they can tell you what they've done. They can give you their CV. Behaviours, you're only going to really find that out over the course of a year or two to see how they behave, right? But you need to promote the right behaviours from the top of your business. And we get people into Wates. And again, I'm quite happy for you to share this with people. We get people into Wates that we have 3 guiding principles. We care, we are fair, and we look for a better way, right? We care, as I said earlier, about everybody in the supply chain from top to bottom and back again. We're fair. We want to make sure that everybody makes money. We want to make sure that everybody gets treated fairly, equally, and appropriately. I don't care what your sex is. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care what your sexual orientation is. None of that matters. Your opinion does. If you've got the right knowledge and experience, why are we not tapping into that, right? So we're fair. And we've looked for a better way. We've had schemes where we've been encouraged by clients to try and drive the price down, but they still want the quality. Well, how do we do that? Well, we could redesign the way that your building looks, but you probably won't be happy with that. We could redesign the products that we use to be more cost effective, give the same performance, but instead of using an expensive one, we might use a slightly less expensive one, but on the basis that it will perform and meet the functional requirements of building regs. Now, we use these sort of as almost a throwaway. We care, we are fair, we look for a better way. And when we get new staff in, it's very easy for you to come from another main contractor and think this is window dressing for clients, for our bids. It's not. It's the way we live. It's driven from the top down, right? This is one of the reasons I've been approached to go work for other main contractors in recent years. And every time I say no. Well, why's that? I could get more money. I could get more status. Would I have the same feeling that these particular behaviours were going to be driven through that business? I'm not entirely sure. I'll stay where I am. And what we need to do is we need to get it so every company's doing that, from the biggest to the smallest.
Yeah, that's interesting to know what the retention of the certain subcontractors is. It's just, you can see the company culture by the how long the people
the turnover
stay.
in staff.
Yes, you just see like just for how long this person is working for that company. Just go like 7 years, great, interesting, and then you can see that sometimes you go to a company and you see like 2 years, 1 year, 6 months.
Well, to be fair, I had a stint of that myself from the financial crash in 2008 until I got to Wates. In subcontracting, it's kind of difficult because sometimes it's the businesses, the crash.
Yes.
Sometimes the businesses are sold or bought out, or they just don't have the right behaviours. And you go, I don't fit here as a person. And that's really difficult. I think that's one of the biggest causes of stress, is working at a company where you do not align with their ethos. If you haven't got a shared goal And I know, again, it sounds like I'm out hugging trees, but I genuinely believe that my ethos aligns with Wates to such a degree that I'd be mad to want to go anywhere else. But you get some subcontractors. Well, I've had it in the past. I worked for one years ago. It was like working for a family. The whole business was, when one of us left, people wept, right? And we had 68 staff. We weren't a small outfit, right?
So relatively big company.
And when I was made managing director there at one point, at the end of my career there, unfortunately made me quite ill. But I used to take Friday afternoons and I'd walk around the shop floor with my hands in my pockets looking like I was doing nothing. And the intention was, if I looked like I got all the time in the world, people on the shop floor would come up and have a chat. People that wouldn't normally talk to somebody in the boardroom. So I'd never wear a suit. I'd wander around the shop floor, my hands in my pockets, just sort of taking all the time in the world. I had things to do. I wanted to be somewhere else. But if you don't give people that time to come and talk to you and make them feel like they're important, they have agency in your business. And again, this comes back to the whole Building Safety Act thing. If you want to perform well, you want to make money. If you want to make money, you want to do it well first time. How do we do it well first time? Well, it's dead easy. Let's get the right people doing the right things at the right time. Bingo, we're there. I mean, it's so simple a concept, and yet we make it so hard because we hide behind competency and we hide or incompetency. We hide behind documents. We say, oh, well, you asked for this. And, well, actually, if you knew it was wrong, why didn't you put your hand up? I asked somebody recently, right, if I gave you £1,000 and a knife, would you go and stab somebody for me? Well, clearly not. You're not a psychopath, right? If I asked you, if I give you £1,000, will you not fit this bit of cavity barrier today? You're all right then. It's easy money. Somebody else will come back and fit that cavity barrier. But not fitting the cavity barrier could cause another Grenfell. You wouldn't be stabbing one person. You might be killing 72. Now, does that make you feel less safe? And it's hard not to sort of take that on board and go, Jesus, that's a fair point. We think of it being a small thing, but it could actually have such a big impact. The problem is, it's when they call it the Swiss cheese effect, don't they? When all of the errors line up and you get that perfect hole right through the cheese, right? And that's when the errors happen. You just, all the slices of cheese, line them up and the holes line up. That's when you get a problem.
Do you think that this is also an industry struggling? Subcontractors are always one step away from going bust, I guess. Is that also maybe this race to the bottom culture as well?
The problem with the race to the bottom culture, and we are all guilty, right? In construction, we're all guilty because they always go, it's the main contractor. Actually, when I see a project, PQS comes to me in good faith and says, I've got X pounds a square metre to put this facade up. And you look and you go, there's no way you can put that up for that money. Who told you that? Oh, the manufacturer.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Why? Because a people pleaser got in front of the PQS and said, here's the cost. I'm not saying they all do this, but it's widespread enough for it to happen regularly. So we get in front of a PQS. The PQS now gets selective hearing loss. You say, this is the cost for the panel. But obviously, there's going to be installation costs and grid work and all this. Right, okay, so it's £200 a square metre. Okay, thanks, fantastic. That gets fed to the client. The client goes, oh, I can have this really nice cladding for £200 a square metre. That's brilliant. Gets fed into the cost plan. They come to us and they go, we've got a fantastic cladding job. We look at it and we go, yeah, it's £750 a square metre. And they go, no, we've got a cost for 200. Where'd you get that? Oh, we got it from this manufacturer. Right, okay, well, the problem is now the die is often cast. The client has already agreed what his budget is for the building. So we're now trying to build a building that nobody can afford. So we got to the market and go, what can you do? And the subcontractor says, why are you making me pay for this building again with cheaper products? And why are you driving us all to the bottom? Now, if they all stood firm and said, actually, that panel's £750 a square metre, regardless of where you buy it, right? All the main contractors and eventually the PQSs would all end up with the bloody nose and learn their lesson. The problem is, one of the subcontractors will crack and go, I can do it for 250.
Because they have a cash flow problem. Because they need to have some cash flow next month or that.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And then the whole loop kicks off again.
Yes, yeah.
So it's sort of, we all have a hand in it. And I think on the back of ISG going bust recently, There's been a lot of big industry figures going, we've got to be in a position where we all make money. Can we just stop with the stupidity? The PQS doesn't go out of the way to do it wrong, right? The client doesn't go out of the way to skin the industry. The main contractor doesn't go out of the way to skin the subcontractor. The subcontractor doesn't go out of the way to skin the manufacturers. And the manufacturers never mean to give a bad price to the PQS. However it happens, we just need to stop that, break the cycle. How? I don't know. But we need to stop that cycle, and we would have a better position for us all to be in.
Maybe just more qualified estimators.
That'd be a damn fine idea, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's
and
something.
Salespeople, qualified salespeople. Because again, the number of people that I spoke to a manufacturer this week, right, of cladding products, and they said, "Oh, we've got a problem, and we've come up with a solution." I went, "Oh, fantastic!" And they showed me grid work for rain screen, which you'll be familiar with. So you said, "You go, okay, yeah," and you'll see this is their standard fixing pattern, but it doesn't take a consideration of the wind load for the building and. So we do structural calculations for the subcontractor. So, oh, right, okay. Do you do that in-house? No. We get a subcontract structural engineer to do it. I said, okay. So that structural engineer, have you checked that they know what they're doing? No, but they've done it before.
Right.
So you haven't asked? No. What happens if that structural engineer retires or goes bust, wins the lottery and gives up, dies, and their PI is no longer paid for? What are you going to do when they have a claim? Well, it'd be the subcontractor's problem. No, you have selected that engineer. It's your design. And they went, is it? Yes. And this is a sales team that have thought this is a great idea. And you go, oh, that's not good. That is really not good. You ought to be giving that back to the subcontractor and letting them do that work. Or saying, you need to talk to the structural engineer. There's one over here if you want to go talk to them, but you need to check them out.